Hi guys, it's Kilo from the sideboard, and today we are working on our Mardu Reanimator deck. Um, as you know, this week we're doing Reanimator week. We are trying to find the strongest Reanimator deck in Standard. Mainly, we're looking for a deck that can harbinge um, Razakaf, the Foul-Blooded. We want a deck that can carry him to victory. And so we're looking for a deck that can support the Razakaf Ever After loop. And today we do have a deck that does support it and supports it quite well. So let's go ahead and look at the land base here. For the land base, we have 4 concealed courtyards, 2 drowned temples for a little bit of ramp. We have 4 foreboding ruins, 4 mountains, 2 plains, 3 shambling vents, and 4 smoldering marsh and a swamp. No inspiring vantage in this deck. The deck does not need early white. There's just no call for early white. So that's the reason we just did not put that card in the deck. However, there's Concealed Courtyard. There is some call for some early black, and we had to squeeze the white in somewhere, so that's where it went in. Let's see. We have a lot of call for early red, so if you'll notice that most of the deck is red. It is built to hit your red mana early. That being said, you start the game with discarding cards to your graveyard using Cathartic Reunion and Tormenting Voice. Cards to discard are Combustible Gearhulk, pretty much any Reanimator target that you may be wanting to bring back later. A lot of times we are going to aim for the combustibles because our earliest reanimation target is a refurbish. Let's get that preview back up. Our earliest reanimation target is a refurbish. But early game, you're going to want to be discarding cards, filling the graveyard, and controlling the board. Now, this deck does not have a lot of early interaction. Sadly to say, more times than not, you're going to set on turn 1, 2. Well, I know you're going to set on turn 1 playing a tap land. But on turn 3 and 4, you're still not going to have a whole lot to do. So, with this deck, you're going to want to wipe the board early, which Yahenni's Expertise and Sweltering Suns give you that option. Pick off any big guy that you need to pick off with the Unlicensed Disintegration, and then move right on into refurbishing your Gearhulks. Once you make it past refurbish and you start getting into turn 5 and turn 6, you're either going to start hard casting those Gearhulks or start dropping a Liliana Death's Majesty. So Liliana, just amazing card in the current format, bringing back huge fatties to do massive work. Just nothing bad to say about Liliana. She's just doing great things right now. Her +1 fills your graveyard and gives you some fodder, and her -3 gives you your best guy back. More times than not, Liliana will work a lot like Jace Architect of Thought. I don't know if a lot of you played him or not, but he would enter the battlefield, you would instantly negative him, then the next turn you would up him, and then negative him again, killing him. This is more than likely the path that you're going to take with Liliana. If you get 2 reanimations out of Liliana, this Planeswalker has done its job, and you're probably not going to lose. However, she does die sometimes, but if you play her, you get your first reanimation. This is just a 5-mana reanimation spell that might have a chance to stick around and do some good. If you get a second one, it's just icing on the cake. Don't worry about the -7. I've never even had to use it, although I guess I could see it become a thing. Also, note, Liliana makes zombies, and anything that comes back from the graveyard is a black zombie in addition to its other colors and types. So, that being said, remember, we do run Kalitas. Kalitas can eat a combustible Gearhulk if it was brought back with Liliana. So, Do remember that. It becomes relevant. We also have Goblin Dark Dwellers. This card is really good at getting us things back from our graveyard. We're not really worried about getting back, you know, cathartic reunion so much in the game one as we are, say, maybe a Sweltering Suns. If you'll notice, every creature we have survives through Sweltering Suns and Yahini's expertise. That's a lot by design. So Goblin Dark Dwellers gives us an extra Sweltering Suns and an extra use on the majority of our sideboard cards. We'll talk about those in just a moment. We then have Cataclysmic Gearhulk, which if I was going to say anything about Cataclysmic Gearhulk, I would say that it's one of the more underrated Gearhulks. This Gearhulk will not allow you to go wide. So if you'll notice, we don't have the ability to go wide in this deck because of this Gearhulk. So if your opponent is trying to go wide, this is the reanimation target to bring back. In certain matchups, this is the best Gearhulk, and other matchups, this is clearly the worst Gearhulk. So just depends. But when you need it and he's good, he's really, really good. So enjoy that. Moving on into our sixth drop, we have Combustible Gearhulk, which is part of our card draw and our graveyard filler. More times than not, you're going to fill the graveyard with him the first time or two. And then once they get down to below, 12, 13 life, they're not going to be able to say graveyard anymore. At that point, he becomes a draw spell. So the later the game goes, the more likely you are to draw cards off of your Combustible Gearhulk. The earlier the game, the more likely you are to fill the graveyard, which is exactly what you want to do. In the early game, you do want more stuff in the graveyard. In the late game, you are trying to finish the game. And you're drawing cards is going to help you get there. So drawing cards in late game, building the graveyard in early game, and doing additional damage early game is exactly what we would like to see out of the Combustible Gearhulk. If you turn 4 Combustible Gearhulk, they're putting it in their graveyard. By the way, Razakath Gearhulk equals 20. So just putting that out there. Razakath Gearhulk equals 20. So you do have a chance to just one-shot somebody with this card. I've hit someone for 18, I've hit someone for 17, and then quite a few times, for many numbers under that. But 18's the biggest I've gotten. But hey, 18 points on turn 4. That's pretty good. Do understand that if you hit someone for anything above 10, you are drawing every card from that point forward. Even in game 2 and game 3, they will not risk it. They have to give you the cards after they've just killed themselves. Next, we have another Reanimator. This is Demon of Dark Schemes. We do not have many good ways to make energy in this deck. However, against a tokens deck or something like that, you're going to have more energy than you know what to do with just because of this guy. We also have no way to spend energy other than this guy, so it does become relevant. 4 creatures are not extremely hard to kill, considering you'll kill 2 or 3 when he enters the battlefield. Next, we have Noxious Gearhulk, which is probably one of the biggest companions in the loop when you start doing the Razakath Ever After loop. Mainly because you can have him kill off the second thing that you brought back and gain the life back so that you can sack him and then go get cards. And we spoke of Linvala, just better than Arborback Stomper. I mean, it's just, what more can you say? Alright, so moving on to the last few cards we have here. We have Razakath the Foul-Blooded, pay 2 life, sacrifice a creature, another creature, can't sacrifice himself, and search your library for anything you want. More times than not, you reanimate this dude on turn 5, they look at their hand, they think about their deck, and they go, I have Grasp of Darkness, I have Fatal Push. I cannot kill this thing. That's an 8/8 flying trample. That's game. And they'll scoop. You get an early Razakaf down, they will scoop, especially if they know that they have no way to deal with it. So just think about that when you're reanimating Razakaf. Consider the deck that you're playing against, and consider, do they even run a main board possibility to deal with this? And if they don't hesitate. Get Razakaf back ASAP. And then you already know about the Ever After, just part of the Razakaf Ever After loop. And then we have Cut to Ribbons. Cut to Ribbons, Cut's just a great card for cutting off the heads of abyssal demons by the looks of it. And although you wouldn't be able to have many cards in graveyards to cut off the head of an abyssal demon with 4 damage. Second ability, though, is probably the more important ability. It's your finisher. A lot of times early game you'll just pitch this in the graveyard anyway, and then late game everyone forgets about it, and then you tap all your mana and deal that last 4 or 5 points of damage, and it's glorious. Moving on to the sideboard, one thing I would like for everyone to kind of keep in mind here on this first part of the sideboard. Why does that keep going away? On the first part of the sideboard is Goblin Dart Dwellers. Great card. Can recast this entire first line here. Forsake the Worldly for a little artifact enchantment hate. Doomfall, because Doomfall is a great card. Make them sacrifice their one dude they have left that you just can't get rid of, or rip something out of their hand. The non-restriction on this, you can choose any non-land card from their hand and exile it. Extremely powerful. I also love the fact that Doomfall is 1 black mana, so it fits in these 3 color decks really, really easy. You also have To the Slaughter, and this card is just great against Planeswalkers. This card will just stop Gideon in his tracks. Most of the time you're going to have Delirium, so they make a Gideon token, and you eat the token and the Gideon. It's great. Works really good against red deck when they have a Hazard out and a Chandra, and you've managed to kill everything else. Same thing, works great. I've actually had that exact line come up before. I was able to maintain everything else, and I was busy chump blocking the Hazard. He plays a Chandra, and at that point, I had no choice but to the Slaughter. Moving on, we also have some Flaying Tendrils and Anguished Unmaking, both of which can be cast off of the Goblin Dart Dwellers. Anguished Unmaking just to deal with those problematic cards, and Flaying Tendrils to deal with those early aggro decks, and to pair with Yahini's expertise to go after some of the bigger decks as well. However, do understand that you will exile most of your own guys if you do cast a Flaying Tendrils off of Yahini's expertise. Cast out for the same reason we have Anguished Unmaking, because we need a way to deal with those hard to deal with problems. We have Hour of Glory for gods, and we have Cataclysmic Gearhulk as the third copy of this. I don't think I need to say much more about that. Any strategy that's trying to go wide, you bring in Cataclysmic Gearhulk and break their heart. Sky Sovereign Consult Flagship. This card is just amazing, and we have the ability to bring artifacts back from the graveyard. So, good card. Sorin Grim Nemesis. Let's hold off on this one for just a minute. I'll end the video on Sorin. Angel of Deliverance. Flying whenever Angel of Deliverance deals damage. Not combat damage. She just deals damage. If there are 4 or more card types in your graveyard, exile target creature an opponent controls. I didn't realize it was non-combat damage. It's just any damage, and she can exile things. I know she's about to rotate, but this is going to make me think and want to see if there's something that can be done with her. I know it's late now, but sorry, I just noticed it. All right, so for the Big Daddy himself, Soren. Um, his +1 is absolutely phenomenal in this deck. I've never seen it as powerful in any deck as it is in this one. We have so many large fatties that cost a ridiculous amount of mana that his +1 could just easily close the game out in a couple turns. Granted, you do have to worry about the notorious reveal a land draw, but Soren, not enough good things can be said about him. Life gain in a pinch, revealing the top cards. You resolve this against an aggro deck, and I know you may not want to bring it in against an aggro deck, but remember he is a kill spell, a reusable kill spell, and he is a reusable draw spell. But if you do resolve this against a deck that you're planning on taking a little bit long, I actually like to bring it in against zombies. You get ahead against zombies, resolve a Soren, you win. Just period, you win. So just keep that in mind. Soren is extremely powerful in this deck. With the Gear Hulk support and Liliana, extremely powerful. Real quick, if I was going to add any upgrades to this deck, if I was going to change this deck, after playing it, I think the deck needs a little more early game interaction, and I could see an argument for Nahiri. Now, a lot of you may ask why we don't have God Pharaoh's Gift in here, and that's because we're actually looking for a Razakath Ever After recursion. We're not actually looking for, a 1/4/4 every turn from God Pharaoh's Gift. We're looking for 2 true bodies every turn. So we're trying to be a little bit more powerful than God Pharaoh's Gift. So and we can start on turn 5. So it's not like we couldn't God Pharaoh's Gift, and I can definitely see the argument for it considering we do have Refurbish. We wouldn't even need Gate to the Afterlife. So I definitely see the argument there. But again, that's kind of not the goal of this deck. This deck was to find a shell for Razakath Ever After, and that's what we're going to continue to do. So even though God Pharaoh's Gift is a good version, for now we're going to hold off of that. I'm not going to say that God Pharaoh's Gift is not a good version for Razakath. Maybe we do need some version of or some number of God Pharaoh's Gifts in the deck. If they were going to fit in any version of the deck, I think it would have to be one of the versions that have white and have Refurbish. So that's something to think about. We still have the Esper deck coming up. I will say that there is a copy of God Pharaoh's Gift in the Esper deck, only one, but there is a copy. So that's something to consider. But stay tuned. We've got some great stuff coming online today, and we'll see you next time. Will not stop recording. Did my OBS go off? Where's my OBS?